What's going on, Fourth and Inches Fantasy Podcast listeners? You got Kev and Stevie P. What's going on, Stevie P?
What's going on, Kev? What's happening, y'all?
What's going on? And we would like to welcome a new member to the team. We want to introduce to you guys and welcome Dan Plata to the squad. What's going on, Dan?
How's it going, listeners? Good to be here. Ready for a fun football season, 2009.
What's happening, Dan?
How's it going, Steve? How's it going, Kev?
Good. Getting ready for another great year of fantasy football. See, we're expanding the team. We're also expanding to the internet. Fourth and Inches Fantasy Podcast has an official website. We are at inchesff.com. I always forget the FF. So yes, it is 4THN inchesff.com. You can go there. We have player profiles. We'll have the three of our rankings for the year and weekly rankings. Tons of articles, tons of content. We'll have daily fantasy advice. We'll have everything a fantasy football player really will be interested in taking a look at. So I advise you all, head over there, check out the subscription plans. We have monthly. We have a yearly subscription, which is 6 months for the football season. So, I just check it out. Go over there. Remember, it's www.4THNinchesff.com. So, we're going to get into this quarterback rankings today. We all three have our quarterback rankings, so we're going to discuss some differences. And first and foremost, Steve, I'm going to ask you, when you rank these quarterbacks, what do you go into? What goes into it? What specifics? What details do you look for? Any numbers from the past? What's going into your quarterback rankings?
The first thing I like to look at is strength of schedule. I like to look at each team, see who they're playing, when they're playing them. You know, for me, a lot of the guys that I rank, probably I would say from 8 to 12, are guys that have good schedules toward the end of the season that I think have some upside and could really, win a championship for you. Because I like drafting quarterbacks late. Those are the guys that I look at, and those are the guys that I rank there. The other things I look at is I kind of look at touchdown upside, guys that are going to throw a lot of touchdowns, running upside, guys that actually can run the ball and throw the ball. Those are all things that go in the process of me figuring out what quarterbacks that I want on my team. If you notice, with my top five, every single one of my top five guys is a guy has the ability to run and throw the ball. So I think that's very important. Andrew Luck is my one, obviously, because you guys probably know that from last season how high I was on him. But he didn't run the ball that much last year, but I could see him, I think it was odd that he didn't score a touchdown running. But that's basically what goes into my decision on how I rank my players.
All right, yeah. So you said you had Andrew Luck 1, so I'll get into you, Dan, because you also have Andrew Luck at number 1. When looking at your quarterbacks, ranking them, what goes into your rankings?
I look at strength of schedule, like Steve. I mean, I think that's important, but more so, I look at past history. You can't go wrong with a guy like Drew Brees who does it year after year. Aaron Rodgers, barring injuries, he's still a guy that continues to put up numbers. So, I mean, I'm a little high on Cousins. He has two amazing receivers. That's another thing I look at is what a guy's receiving core is. I'm not going to obviously pick a guy that's throwing to trash out there, but guys that have quality receivers, top ends in the league. That's always important. Also, the running is a good thing. I know Cam Newton's always ranked really high because of his ability to run. Deshaun Watson, he's a dual threat. Luck he can break the pocket anytime. So those are names that I like too because of the dual threat purpose.
Yeah, I agree, guys. I think when we're looking at strength of schedule, it's very important. Division he plays in is going to go into that strength of schedule. That seems to has always a lot of times has helped Tom Brady in the past because the division's been so terrible. Also, like you said, Dan, past history and consistency over a career is important. Me and Steve are a little different in our drafting philosophies, as you'll probably tell through the season. I'm a little safer. Steve likes to take risks. and Steve's risk pay off. But I'll say Steve's high on Kyler Murray. I'd rather be safer and take a guy like Ben Roethlisberger or Phillip Rivers, who I just know are going to get. They got shots for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns any game they go out there. So, but I kind of agree with you guys. I actually have Mahomes as my number one. I'm just going board here. Do I think Tyreek Hill being suspended is going to factor in? Yes, but I also think Sammy Watkins, as long as he stays healthy for the first 8 games, should be able to fulfill a lot of that production. He still has a pass-catching running back coming out, Damian Williams. He's still got the best tight end in football there. And personally, last year through 16 weeks, Patrick Mahomes scored 399 fantasy points. The next closest was Matt Ryan at 321. That's essentially 85% of what Mahomes did. I mean, he's just incredible last year. So even if he dips a little bit from Tyreek Hill, I still don't think it's going to knock him out of being the number one quarterback. However, if I was to go opposite of Mahomes, if I was to say go, I would like Deshaun Watson. I love Deshaun's weapons, especially if they stay healthy. I love DeAndre Hopkins. He's my favorite wide receiver in the league. Will Fuller, if he can stay healthy, he's proved to be, a potential number 2 receiver. And Kiki Kuti, him in the slot, there was a game last year where he got 15 targets. So they obviously have a lot of trust in him. And if they can somehow get a running game together and make the Texans offense lethal. So if I wasn't going to go with Mahomes and be traditional, I'd probably go with Watson. So going forward, all of us are pretty high on Carson Wentz. I have him 4. I think, Dan, you also have him 4. And
yeah,
Steve, you have him 5. Dan, why don't you talk a little bit about Carson Wentz and, kind of enlighten everybody else on the things that we know.
we get the pleasure of watching Carson Wentz every week because of being in Jersey. We're 10-15 minutes from the link, and the kid is just he's got abilities that you can't teach. He's got arm strength, he's got accuracy, he's got an ability to break the pocket at any time. He's never down. He's never can count him out. He's intelligent. He's prepared. He's a very, very similar quarterback to an Andrew Luck. He has just been bitten by the injury bug twice now in his first 3 years, and unfortunately, it's put a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. Not necessarily mine, because I see what he's capable of when he's healthy. He doesn't really put up a lot of bad games. He's consistent. Kev, you kind of talked about consistency, and he's consistent. And he's so high on my list because the ceiling is unbelievable. He has so many weapons in Philly now, and they just keep on improving. They have JJ now. They have Miles, the 2 rookies. These kids are going to produce right away. I don't think they're going to take very long to get acclimated to the system. Zach Ertz is second best, third best tight end in football. Alshon's back again for another year. Now they brought in Deshaun Jackson back. He's the deep threat. He'll take the top off. It's going to be exciting to watch. And this kid, Carson Wentz, I call him a kid. He's only in his 4th year now, and he's definitely one to watch.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think that his weapons are just his weapons on the outside are just so deadly. I mean, he's got 2 tight ends that I think Dallas Goedert is literally a top 10 tight end in the NFL right now. If he was on a different team, you just don't see him.
He's not going to get the target. He's not going to get the targets,
but he's still just a lethal player to have on your depth chart. You got 3 receivers, all who have proven that they can play with Jackson, Aguilar, and Jeffrey, and then you got J.J. Arcega-Whiteside that he's just drafted in the 2nd round, who literally is just a beast. He looks like a basketball player going up for rebounds all the time. Out of the backfield now, you got Jordan Howard, you got Miles Sanders. Both of those guys are going to open up the running, are going to be able to run the ball. It's going to open up the pass game. Miles Sanders will probably catch a little more balls out of the backfield, although they're saying Jordan Howard is doing a good job in camp with his receiving, so we'll see how that goes. But all in all, similar things, man. I mean, 2 years ago, this guy was league MVP. I think he rushed himself back a little bit from the ACL and was a little tentative all last year. Then he
Yeah, he
hurt
never
the
played
back.
the same.
So
He
So
played worried.
yeah. So same thing. I think he'll just return to form as same he was 2 years ago and just pick up where he left off from them. So what do you think, Steve?
Yeah, Carson Wentz. I don't think people realize how good he was last year. He had 7 turnovers, 7 interceptions, 6 fumbles, so he had 13 turnovers. But
He just fumbled a lot.
Had he played all 16 games, he was on a 4,471 yard pace. He was also on a 30 touchdown pace. That, to me, is top 5. That's a top 5 quarterback right there. I mean, you're talking about 4,500 yards. You're talking about, he didn't have any rushing touchdowns, but that was because, he was worried about the knee. You know that he is a mobile quarterback. He's able to get out of the pocket. He's able to run. So for me, I feel like if that was a bad season, because a lot of people said Carson Wentz had a bad season. If that was a bad season from Carson Wentz and he was on a 4471 yard pace, a 30 touchdown pace, and let's say 12 interceptions and 10 fumbles, that's a terrible season when you're talking about turnovers. But if you're talking about yardage and touchdowns, if that's his floor, then, exactly. If that's his floor, then, hey, sign me up.
Yeah, and I think the only problem with it is the injury bug. I mean, I think everybody knows that statistically he will be a top 5 quarterback. But I think it's just, people get worried about him much like they're worried about, say, Todd Gurley right now. Like, Gurley should be the number 1 running back taken. But it's, the injury bug has bit him and people are worried about it. So I guess you can say something similar, although Todd Gurley is best running back. So, all right. So now we're going to get into a little bit of our differences in our rankings. So I'm going to start with you, Steve. You are extremely high on Kyler Murray. You have him ranked as your number 6 quarterback for the year. I think I have him at 16. Dan, do you know offhand where you have him at?
Yeah, he is number. Actually, he's number 6. He's number 16 for me as well.
Exactly. So okay, so we both have him at 16. Steve, you have him at 6. What do you love about Kyler Murray?
Everything.
Apparently.
Everything. The kid has no weakness. So I was listening to Adam Silva. He's another fantasy analyst that most of you would be familiar with if you are familiar with podcasts. And he was actually saying something that really caught my attention. So there's 5 traits that basically Hall of Fame quarterbacks have. Mobility, arm strength. Arm strength is actually the last of the 5, but it was mobility, arm strength, accuracy, pocket awareness, and intelligence. So basically just figuring out whether you can throw it, if you're, where to throw the ball. Kyler Murray has 4 of those things. Most Hall of Fame quarterbacks that he was saying have 3 of those things. So I'm not saying Kyler Murray is a Hall of Famer. What I am saying is the kid threw for 4,361 yards last year, 42 touchdowns. He had 7 interceptions. He rushed for 1,001 yard. He had 12 rushing touchdowns, and he had 2 fumbles. The guy had basically 5,362 yards of total offense, 54 touchdowns, and less than 10 turnovers. The kid is electric. If you watch the game against Texas, he basically did a little juke move in the pocket as he saw the pressure coming, hit the sideline, and was out. My man was out like shout. It was ridiculous how fast he got up the field. There was no one on that Texas defense that was going to catch him, and it was just crazy to watch. Kyler Murray is really, really, really good. There's no other way to explain it. And when people ask me, hey, what do you think about Kyler Murray? This is basically what I tell them. I feel like he is Michael Vick quick. He's not as fast as Michael Vick. Obviously, Michael Vick is just outrageous. But he is basically Michael Vick quick, can make anybody miss him. And he's Drew Brees accurate. If you want to take numbers into account and you want to talk about, because I know the stigma of running quarterbacks, they're not accurate. Kyler Murray is very accurate. It's ridiculous. So Drew Brees, we could all agree, is probably the most accurate quarterback in NFL history. So Drew Brees in college had a 60.4% completion rate. Kyler Murray had a 69% completion rate. He was almost 10 points better than Drew Brees. And Drew Brees, we know, is the most accurate NFL quarterback. Obviously, Drew Brees, his maturation process, made him into the quarterback he is today. So we're going to have to see Kyler Murray go through the same growing pains. But if he progresses at a rate of what he's doing from college to the NFL, he's going to be ridiculous, and I want him as my quarterback in fantasy football.
Yeah, you made a great case for him. I think when you look at Kyler, it's kind of the Russell Wilson is always going to be the comparison because it's the short, quick quarterback, played baseball, has the quick, accurate arm. The key is going to be staying healthy the way Russell does for Kyler to me. I just think that's going to be the key for him. So, Dan, I'm going to take you to Kirk Cousins. You got Kirk Cousins as a number one quarterback, as a quarterback one. You have him finishing number 12 overall. It's definitely higher than when I have him. And, Steve, I believe you have him at, it looks like 15 or 16. So, what do you like about Cousins that makes you think that he's going to be a number one quarterback?
I like two guys named Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs. Two wideouts that are top in the league. I mean, you could put both of those guys in the top 10. Right now, Thielen had a monster year coming out, and he stayed consistent. Diggs, picked up the pace as the year went along. And, Kirk Cousins threw for 4,298 yards last year, 30 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 99.7, basically 100 rating. He was slow. The big knock on Kirk Cousins that people don't like him and stay away from him is because he's not a winner. And I'll give him that. He's not. I don't think the guy, chooses to blow at the end of the games, but he does. He still puts up numbers, and that's what fantasy football is. We don't base this off of wins and losses. We base it off of statistics. And he's a stats guy. He's had 4 years of 4,000 yards. 1 year he almost had 5,000 yards, and this was in Washington when he had garbage receivers. He's got weapons in Minnesota, and he's got Dalvin Cook, he's got Kyle Rudolph, he's got guys that make plays. So, he's not in my top 10, but I put him at 12 for a reason because I think he's right on the edge of being an RB1 or QB1. I think he's just right at the cutoff for me. You guys can now debate.
For me, I'll chime in. I think I don't hate Kirk Cousins. He has his strength of schedule. He is the 10th. In our if you go to our website, fourthandinches.com, you will see that they have the 10th best schedule for quarterbacks. So I could definitely see him having a good season. My worry for him is more that I think Dalvin Cook is going to have a ridiculous season. I am really high on Dalvin Cook. I've been doing a lot of mock drafts and taking a lot of wide receivers late. And but I'm really high on Cook. If I can get Cook, at the end of the first round, beginning of the second round, I'm not mad about that. I love what the kid has, and I think he's going to have a big season, which I think could hurt Kirk a little bit. I don't think that he is going to throw as much as he did last year. Last year they threw the ball a shit ton, especially in the beginning of the season. It wasn't
once they fired DeFilippo, and that's when they started to run the ball more.
Exactly. So, for me, I think Kirk Cousins will have a good season. I don't know if he'll be a top 12 guy, but I could definitely see him in the top, 15. I might actually even move him up in my ranks. But right now, I think I have him at 16. I might move him up to like 15, 14, because I do like the offense, and I think he could be good. I just don't see him as a number one guy.
All right, so Steve, Josh Allen, number 11 overall.
Clearly, Josh Allen's better than Kirk Cousins.
Number 11 overall. You got to explain that one. That's going to be the one that needs explaining.
Okay, so I will basically give you guys the skinny. So this dude, okay, I'm going to start off. Everybody knows that I am a Bills fan. I have been a Bills fan since I can remember. Early 90s, I was rooting for the Bills. I love the Buffalo Bills, but that is not why I have Josh Allen where I have him. So I have Josh Allen where I have him because the dude in 12 games ran for 631 yards and 8 touchdowns. He only had 2 fumbles. He had 2,074 yards and 10 touchdowns. He threw 12 interceptions. He literally had nothing last year. LaShawn McCoy played like shit. The offensive line played like shit. He had no wide receivers. They were all bad. You know what I mean? It wasn't until Robert Foster actually started playing decent that it opened up the field for him a little bit. And if you look at his games, when Robert Foster actually started playing well, I'm going to just run down those games. But if you look at those games when Robert Foster started playing well, his numbers were. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so I would say about week 12 is when Robert Foster bursted onto the scene. He started scoring touchdowns. So week 12, he had 28.3 fantasy points, 32.7 fantasy points. This is in 6-point per passing touchdown, by the way. 18.3 fantasy points, 21.8 fantasy points, 13.7 fantasy points, and 46.5 fantasy points. The dude went off the rest of the season. In the beginning of the season, he was bad. I'll give you that all day. But they have a much improved offensive line. If you go look at their offensive line, they added pieces that is definitely going to make that offensive line much, much better. I think LaShawn McCoy might be better because the offensive line is better. They brought in John Brown, who's a guy that I love. I just think that this offense is going to be much improved from what it was last year. And to me, if this kid can play the way he played in the second half of the season throughout the entire season, while throwing in some stinkers that we know he will throw in, he's going to finish as a top 10 guy. I just don't see how that won't happen if he stays healthy and the offense plays better than it did last year.
Yeah, I have Allen at 25. I think, Dan, you said he was at 22 earlier today.
Yeah.
Obviously, you are much higher of a believer than me and Dan. So, that will let play out. I'm going to talk about a guy I'm high on, and that is Jameis Winston. I have Jameis ranked as my number 9 quarterback. I think, Steve, you actually have him 10th, so I'm not too far ahead of you. But, yeah, I just love the situation Jameis got put into. He's kind of in a make-it-or-break-it year. Going in with one of the best quarterback developers of all time in Bruce Arians. On top of that, the mentality of Jameis Winston matches the mentality of Bruce Arians. They're both very risky players and risky coaches. I think that Mike Evans is going to have a big year. I think Chris Godwin could have a big year. I think the thing with Tampa that is almost certain is that they're going to have some high-scoring games because their defense is not very good. They can't really run the ball, so all they're going to be able to do is throw the ball around. Jameis will throw some interceptions. It's what he does. But in the end, I'm banking on Jameis Winston finishing this year as a top 10 quarterback. And right now he's going in the 9th round. If you can get a guy like that in the 9th round, I'm ecstatic for it. It's a risky play, but considering his history, but that's a guy I'm high on this year. Steve, I know you're a little high on him too, so why don't you get into it?
Yeah, Jameis he's the kind of quarterback I like to draft. I see him consistently going in round 12, round 13. I am a late drafter of quarterbacks. I do not like taking guys. If I see a really good value, I'll take him at 8 or 9. Like last year, I took Andrew Luck, I believe in round 9 in our 12-team league that we all three play in. I just thought he was a really good value there. But normally, I'm taking quarterbacks in 10, 11, 12, 13. So for me, Jameis Winston is a guy that I really like. I think he has the upside of a top 7 quarterback, and I don't see him falling below the top 12. I think people are sleeping on him because of his turnover proneness, which I'm not going to say I see getting better this year, but I think Bruce Arians can pull out enough out of Jameis Winston to make him a top 7 quarterback, which if I'm getting that in round 13, I'm definitely going to do that all day. Jameis has weapons at every position other than running back, but I don't really care. It's not a run game there, really, because I think their offensive line isn't all that great, and Jameis is going to be winging it. If you're going to give me a guy who's going to throw 600 times in the 13th round, I'm going to do that all day. And Jameis will throw the ball 600 times this year.
Only 100 of them for interceptions.
Yeah. All right, so Dan, one guy I noticed you're a little lower on, and probably most people seem to be dropping on Big Ben with the Los Antonio Browns. So why don't you explain Ben Roethlisberger and why you have him at, I believe, 18 overall.
18 overall. You hit it. That's pretty much the sole reason. I like drafting Big Ben. I always get good value on Big Ben, and when everybody just laughs at the draft and he's so old, he's so over the hill, and then he does what he does last year and he throws 5,000 yards. We talked about why we like certain quarterbacks, why we don't like quarterbacks, and he's consistency. But Juju is still so young to put this whole entire team on his shoulders, and Antonio Brown was that guy. He was the guy that is always open. Just throw the ball in his area. He comes down with it. I haven't seen a receiver like with his talent in a long time. Back to Megatron days. He was a different animal. So it's not that I'm low on Big Ben. I just don't think he's going to produce above middle grade. That's where he's going to stay right in the middle of the pack there. I don't think he's going to do anything more. I don't think he's going to do anything less. Juju's going to get his yards. But I just think Pittsburgh overall probably end up as an 8-8 team. I think they're a little rebuild here or there. So he's just going to be. I think he's just going to have a mediocre year for me.
Yeah, I think we all definitely see some point dropping from Big Ben as well. Last year he finished as the number 3 quarterback. Losing a guy like Antonio, it's going to definitely deplete your receiving core. I like some of the young guys, but they're not going to be Antonio Brown yet. So, yeah, I could definitely see Ben dropping down. I still have him I have him ranked number 12, so I still have him as a quarterback 1 because I think he's going to throw the ball a ton. But, I could definitely see his point total going down. Steve, Russell Wilson. I know where you're going with this one because it almost makes a lot of sense. So go ahead. Tell me about Russell Wilson.
They're going to run the ball 1,000 times.
Exactly.
it's that
you sure this DK kid looks pretty good from what they're saying?
He does look good. I don't dislike the Seahawks. I think. Okay, so let me just get into the pure stats of it all. So the issue that I have with Russell Wilson is not that I think he's going to be bad. I don't think he's going to be bad. I just don't think that they are going to change their philosophy. I think they're going to run. I think they drafted Penny for a reason. I think they're going to give him anywhere from 120 to 150 touches, and I think they're going to give Chris Carson 200 touches. You know what I mean? There's going to be a lot of running in the future of the Seahawks, and I think that it is really hard to sustain a I think it was 8.3, touchdown rate, which is basically for every 8 passes he threw a touchdown. That's an insane number. You know what I mean? That's a really, really high number.
And that's where I was going. That's where I was kind of going with it. Like his touchdowns last year were ridiculous for the amount of time they threw the ball.
Exactly. It's just not a sustainable number for him to sustain. And if his touchdowns go down, his yardage is not good enough to propel him to be a top 12 guy. So for me, I have Russell Wilson, I believe, at 19, and that's probably where he's going to stay because when I rank players, I not only rank them with, kind of my thoughts, but I also rank them as where if I'm going to take them. I know if people draft boards, Russell Wilson will not be the 19th quarterback, but I don't want to draft him. So I have him down that low because I have Tom Brady in front of Russell Wilson. You know what I mean? So I am just basically telling you guys, I'm not drafting Russell Wilson. That's basically what I'm telling you with my rank. So when you see a guy, down that low, I'm probably not getting that guy. So that's basically how I feel about it.
So Josh Allen and Russell Wilson are both staring at you on the board. You're grabbing the Josh Allen card and putting him up there ahead of Russell Wilson.
Yes. Yep.
Bills.
I don't want Russell Wilson on my team.
Bills fan.
Ooh, man, I can't wait to call you out on that one at the end of the year. All right, so Dan, so we'll get into kind of the mid-tier guys. We'll get into our kind of these QB2s here for me and Dan here that we're a little one. I'm higher on Matthew Stafford. So I guess I'll talk about Matthew Stafford first since I just brought him up. But I actually really like the Lions offense. I'm a little nervous about what they're going to do and what their plan is because I don't think they even know what their identity is. But I love the talent on the team. I love Marvin Jones. I think Marvin Jones has been a really solid receiver that is completely overlooked. Before last year, he was a number 1 wide receiver. He finished wide receiver 12 in PPR 2 years ago. Last year, he only played 9 games. Golden Tate got traded in the middle of the season, and everything just got thrown off for Stafford. I mean, he literally only had Kenny Golladay to rely upon. Going into this year, he's got Marvin Jones back. He's got they picked up Danny Amendola for the slot, which I think is a really good slot receiver. So now you got Golladay and Marvin Jones. You got Amendola in the slot. Drafted T.J. Hawkinson, number 9 overall, and they're saying Carrion's going to catch 60 balls this year. I think Matthew Stafford is a guy that you can definitely grab, maybe even with like a Jameis Winston. And if Jameis doesn't pan out, you're probably going to be able to fall back on Stafford. Stafford for the last 3 years, prior to last year, the 3 previous years was the number 10 quarterback each year. He still has that potential. Last year was just a bad year for the Lions overall. So Dan, I'll get into you. Jimmy G. You are really low on Jimmy G. You have Jimmy G ranked in the 20s.
22?
You have him ranked
22.
at
22.
21 because the number 1 line's gone. So you have him ranked at 21. So Dan, explain Jimmy G, why you're so low on Jimmy G.
All right. Why should you be high on Jimmy G? I mean, the guy has less than 3,000 yards in his career. He only shined for a few games in New England under Bill Belichick where Matt Castle looked like an MVP out there. And, San Fran gave him a ton of money, and he's obviously been hurt, but he's not worth anything higher than in the 20s because he hasn't proven it yet. I know that the reviews are great, that he's got a strong arm, he's got, good head on shoulders, he's tall, sees over the pocket like a big man. But I'm not buying his attributes in fantasy football. I'm buying his statistics, and right now the guy doesn't have any statistics, so I'm just going off of his, the guy's been in the league for, 5-6 years, and he really, I know he played behind Tom Brady. Not a whole lot of people get any work behind Tom Brady, but I mean, you got to show me something, and he really hasn't shown anything in the NFL yet. I'm not saying that he won't this year. I mean, he could be that sleeper that has a nice year, but he's got to stay in the 20s for me because his statistics do not represent anything higher.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Jimmy G is exactly what you said. It's just health. He just can't stay healthy. You know, the guy's in a situation where, you know, Kyle Shanahan is an outstanding offensive coordinator, he's extending offensive coordinator. He's got a great system. The Shanahan system has been around forever and produced multiple good fantasy quarterbacks. So I think a lot of people are just relying on the potential of Jimmy G, what we've seen in New England with the system of Kyle Shanahan. He does have some talent, some young talented wide receiver, some young unknowns. Dante Pettis is a really solid player. He showed on that, you know, he had a few really good weeks last year. He's got one of the best tight ends in football. But yeah, he still has to prove it. So I think I have him ranked at 17. So I'm not much higher on him than you. You were just lowest on him. But yeah, Steve, you got any comments on Jimmy G?
Yes, if Jimmy G had a number one wide receiver, I would have him in my top 12. He just doesn't have the Julios or the DeAndre Hopkins or anybody like that. But I'll tell you what, I watched this kid play, and okay, so let's, for example, take the Jaguars game from 2 seasons ago. I don't know if you guys remember that game, but he tore the Jags a new asshole. He was awesome. He was throwing the ball all over the field. The Jags didn't know what the hell to do with themselves. They were a playoff team that year. You know, everybody thought that they were gonna, go into go up to San Francisco and just wreck them, and that didn't happen at all. You know, they got their asses handed to them.
They did.
Yeah, pretty thoroughly. I mean, and Jimmy G looked really, really good in that game. I remember thinking after watching that game, this kid's good. They might have something here.
I think Blake Bortles had one good game in 5 years too. So I mean,
yeah, Jimmy G and Blake Bortles. That's not even. You can't even compare the two.
You're right, but Blake Bortles threw for more yards in the season than Jimmy has in his entire career.
Yeah, but Blake Bortles played 16 games in a season. He hasn't had a 16-game season yet. I mean, you're comparing oranges to apples. You're saying that he is. You're basically saying that Jimmy Garoppolo, because he hasn't played 16 games, sucks. That's basically what you're saying. It's not the truth. If you look, so there is a reason that Bill Belichick did not want to get rid of Jimmy G. You know what I mean? He didn't want to get rid of Jimmy G. He was forced to get rid of Jimmy G because, Robert Kraft and Tom Brady basically, colluded to have Brady play for the next 5 years or whatever the hell it was at that point. But, Bill Belichick wanted to move on from Tom Brady and play Jimmy G. And I trust,
the greatest coach ever.
I trust Bill Belichick's eye for talent. So for me, Jimmy G is very talented and has the capability of being a very good quarterback. He just doesn't have the number one receiver that, some of the guys that I have higher on my list have, and that's why I have Jimmy G at 15 or 16, whatever.
Well, he's not at the bottom of my list because he has that word potential. He does have the attributes. He has the potential. So he's sitting there a little above 20. It's just he's only there because of the unproven, basically. We'll see if he, with the Kyle Shanahan's offense, if he can shine this year. This might be the breakout year, but as of right now, he's got to sit in that place because I'm not touching him. Just like you said, you wouldn't touch Russell Wilson. I'm not gonna put him on my injured reserve. Like he's probably been on a couple people's last couple years.
All right, guys, that's pretty much everything we have for you in differences of our rankings. We're going to end the show now. Remember, if you want to see all of our rankings, you can, as well as articles, blogs, videos, player profiles, daily fantasy content, and more. Visit www.fourthandinchesff.com. That's www.4thnInchesFF.com. And we'll be back to you with more podcasts coming up. So for now, and until next time, Dan, Steve, I will talk to you guys later.
All right.
Peace out,
See you, Steve. See you, Kev. Have a good one,
Peace
guys.
out, fellas.
Hey.